I want to just get back to this thought of engineering risk, because this is something I struggled with for a long time. And I went to school as an engineer. I got a mechanical engineering degree at MIT, and they basically teach you to make sure that the plane doesn't fall out of the sky, the bridge doesn't break. And so you take this, bias towards failure and you magnify it, because as an engineer, your job is literally to make sure these things don't happen. But I found myself, when I started this show, I was in a real risk-averse situation. And it wasn't until I met one of my mentors, Dan Pena, the $1 trillion man, who I both love and hate equally, where he basically said, you need to be taking more risk in your life. And you need to engineer risk back into your life, because what you'll find out is most of the fears are unfounded, and the wins will just out-magnify all of it. And most people will forget about your losses and just remember your wins. And that's allowed me to do things that I never would have imagined doing, like running for mayor in 2020, things that I would have never imagined. I signed myself up for a boxing match earlier this year at the O2 Arena when Martin Ford asked me to go on his card. I was 51 years old. I'm telling you, James, when I was 41 and in better shape physically, I would have been mentally unprepared to do that. But once I understood my mind, I thought, wait a second. Okay, it's 3 rounds. Okay, I get KO'd on television and it's on YouTube forever. But what's the worst that can happen? But the 41-year-old Brian, he couldn't handle that. I would have been terrified to do that. But now I can look at it in my brain and say, okay, you got about, how many more years you got left? 30 years left? You want to make this an incredible life. Well, then you're going to have to engineer that risk into your life. And maybe from the outside, that looks like confidence or arrogance, I'm not sure. But for me, it's the only way I can enjoy my life now, is to put myself way out of my comfort zone and to kind of see what happens.
Our enemies are always greater in our imagination than they'll ever be in real life. And Ryan Holiday, in his recent book, Courage is Calling, talks about some men that are in I think they're in the desert or they're in Africa, they're somewhere, and they're surrounded by grass, tall grass, and they can hear wolves. And they're thinking, we're all going to get eaten, the horses are going to get eaten. Do we turn around? Do we move? It's howling all night. And when they moved forward, there was only 2 of them making all the noise. But in their minds, there were enough to devour the whole load of them. So he said, there are always more wolves until they're counted. And that really resonated with me. And I was thinking about it. And even we spoke offline about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My opponent in my mind is always stronger, scarier. He trains harder. He gets up earlier. He's a savage, all of these things. And then you compete against them. They're the nicest people. They're no different to you. You think, in competition, someone might try and hurt me. They never really do. And I say to people, when it comes to competing in jiu-jitsu, it terrifies me. It honestly does.
Have you done it yet?
Yeah.
Okay,
And whenever I get comfortable, similar to what you were saying, I'm like, I need to do a comp. I can't be comfortable. And it ruins my weekend. I stress about it. I can't even be present with people the day before or the morning of, or even when I see my teammates. They're like, hey, what time are you on? And I'm like, I don't even enjoy this interaction, but whether I win or lose, it's a net benefit. Like you say, I'm exposing myself to more risk. I'm now training with someone who doesn't have the motivation to keep me injury free or to not do anything stupid. Like, we can't jump guard in training because we're all in the same academy. We want to keep people safe. But in competition, that's permitted. Or someone can break my leg and it's completely fine with no whatever. So when I compete, at the end of it, I go, it wasn't that bad, but I expose myself to the risk, the danger, the fear, the insecurities. But at the same time, the fear is normal. And again, we're at this kind of delta where we can move in 2 ways. We can either see victory or loss. But strangely enough, sometimes I go and I kind of hope I lose. And this is a weird thing to say, because the times I've lost, I'm a different person the day after. Because I wake up, I know I'm not as good as I thought, I'm not training as hard as I thought, I'm not as fit as I should be. And I can take those personal emotions and I can make them into a better person. Winning makes you weak. Conor McGregor again. I think he's won too much. Credit to him for it. The fact that he hasn't won in a long time, all of these things are all credited to his success. In some respects, he got too good. So when we are faced with this fear in yourself, with the boxing, I'm sure that if you did get knocked out, where most people would think, he'll be embarrassed, all of this, you might wake up the next day as someone that goes, I'm gonna do that better. I'm gonna hire a boxing coach. I'm gonna learn to keep my gloves up. I'm gonna be faster. I'm gonna improve my footwork. And people without the same values would go, why is he doing that again? When really you've just created this new, hungrier version of yourself. And I think that exposing ourselves to these failures is really just such a great way to bridge the connection to a version of yourself you might need to be to get to the person you want to become.
Yeah, very much so. You know, I was training for this fight, and I got the privilege of training with David Hay in his boxing gym south of the river, Haymaker, and David's been kind of a friend for many, many years, and he got me down there, and I only had about 6 weeks to train, and so the philosophy was I wouldn't do any sparring because of injury. And David watched me after like 3 sessions, and he's like, you know, you got to do some sparring, Brian, with someone you've never met before. You have to do it mentally. He's like, otherwise, all this is nonsense. You're going to hit pads. Who gives a shit? And so he said, I'm going to set you up with a sparring partner, and you're not going to meet him. You're not going to know anything about him. We're going to do this just like a fight on Sunday. You're going to show up at 6 o'clock. I'm going to bring him in the ring with the call signs, and you guys are going to go at it. And we did that. And he's like, Brian, it's going to be the longest day of your life. And I was out there, like, it was the hardest thing. I was thinking about it all day. I couldn't even be with my kids outside the gym. I was like cold sweats going through my mind. What's going to happen? My jaw's going to break. Like all these crazy situations, right? I get in there. It's this kid half my age, Filipino kid, taller than me. I'm just like, are you kidding me? And it was a tense and difficult 3 rounds. But afterwards, it was just massively eye-opening. Like none of the bad stuff happened. I learned on the back of it. The next set was even better. And it was just like, okay, we progress. But it was probably the scariest thing I've done in years, just putting myself in a situation that now in retrospect wasn't scary. And then I looked at that and I'm like, how many of these things am I putting in the rest of my life, building them up to be these scary things when they're just not?
I think we don't share this enough, and George St. Pierre speaks about this. He says that he was frightened to the point he couldn't sleep before every match. And the only one match that he wasn't so fearful that he could actually have a good night's sleep, he lost.
Matt Serra.
Yeah, Matt Serra.
Yeah.
And everyone was expecting it was a massive upset. But I think that we need to remind ourselves that the people we hold in the highest regard are scared too. And that's completely fine. And we do need to repackage our thoughts. We do need to see things through a different lens. And like some of the white belts that I train, I take a class on a Friday and I speak to them and they go, shall I compete? I go, whichever way it goes, it's going to be the best thing you do, because you're going to come in as a different person. I think that fear isn't a bad thing. Fear is a tool we should use. And a good friend of mine says, the lessons we need are in the tasks we're avoiding. And whenever I kind of question something to her, I go, shall I do this? She'll just say that. And I'll go, wow, like that's completely right. And if we don't have those levels of discomfort, we live in almost like an echo chamber where, for instance, some celebrities that do jiu-jitsu only do privates with people that they pay. Similar to yourself, you went in the ring with someone who is going to hit you in the face if you put your gloves down, whereas the person you pay probably isn't in the coaching side of things.
That's what David said.
Yeah, and
you're training, you're paying him. He'll tell you he's going to give you a hard session, but he's not really.
And Tom Hardy, I think last weekend, competed in a reorg competition in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I heard that.
He won both of his brackets, and I was like, that shows to me, like he would have had the same thing where people get excited when they roll with you. Like I'm sure purple belt also, people see that, oh, it's that guy, I'm going to fuck him up, whatever. The fears that you start building up when really those people finish, they shake your hand, they're like, I love your podcast. You would have seen them in your head as someone who potentially wanted to hurt you or show you up. Like you say, those fears in our mind, we always multiply them. We always magnify them. And I'm sure for hundreds of thousands of years, that was a net benefit. But right now, it's just going to crush and limit and hinder the ambitions of millions of people.
Hey, it's Brian Rose, founder of the DeFi Academy. I've told you my 4-week crypto bootcamp is amazing, but don't take my word for it. This is what my students are saying.
The DeFi Academy was an amazing experience for me. It took me totally out of my comfort zone.
In this course, I was challenged, I was held accountable, and pushed to do things that honestly weren't always easy.
It's been phenomenal, and I can't believe we're already up on our 4 weeks. It has flown by.
Going through this DeFi accelerator by far was one of the best courses I've taken.
You do this course, you really get into the nitty-gritty of the activities that will make you comfortable with decentralized finance.
Thank you so much to Brian and everyone at London Real and the DeFi Academy for even putting together an amazing course like this.
Anybody else that wants to do it, please sign up. It is well worth the money.